One of Donald Trump's first moves after his election last month was to make Steve Bannon his chief strategist, and he's ignored calls to reverse that decision. Here to discuss now, CNN political commentator Peter Beinart, who's a contributor to The Atlantic, Rabbi Shmuley, who is the author of The Israel Warrior, and CNN political commentator Andy Dean, former president of Trump Productions. Good to have all of you on. Thank you very much. Rabbi, I want to start with you because you posted this last night. This is on Twitter. It's a picture of yourself with Stephen Bannon, Donald Trump's controversial senior advisor. The ADL, or the Anti-Defamation League, criticized Bannon, saying Bannon has embraced the alt-right to a loose network of white nationalists and anti-Semites. By tweeting this picture, do you think are you helping give cover to Bannon and his questionable attitude towards Jews? Well, the alt-right is something deplorable, and let's condemn it outright. But when it comes to anti-Semitism, Steve Bannon has opposed the Iran nuclear agreement. I'm much more afraid of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who threatens a second Holocaust and the annihilation of my people. Steve Bannon has opposed BDS, which is an anti-Semitic attempt to economically destroy the state of Israel. He opened a bureau in Jerusalem for Israel to get its message out, and this is a tiny democracy whose legitimacy is being challenged on a daily basis, so it could finally make its case. We had a very substantive conversation about human rights. I believe that the Trump administration needs a strong human rights agenda. There are people dying in Syria and Aleppo every single day. The United States has done nothing. Castro dies, and our president makes a neutral statement and ignores gulags and ignores firing squads. Bannon and Trump made a very strong statement about the human rights abuses of the Castro regime. So I was grateful to him that he heard me out on that, and I hope that there will be a strong
Just for the sake of time, though, my question was, are you giving him cover by
for
tweeting out like that?
anti-Semitism? There's no reason whatsoever to believe that Steve Bannon is anything but a friend of the state of Israel, and I don't believe in besmirching people and smearing their reputations without evidence.
Peter?
No, I wouldn't accuse Steve Bannon of being an anti-Semite. What I do think is that Breitbart, the newspaper, the publication that he ran a lot of things that could be called anti-Muslim bigotry. The praise of the Confederate flag, I think, was racist. They ran a story saying, you know, hoist it high and proud, and some very vicious and demeaning stuff about women. So, you know, I hope you challenged him on that, and I also hope you challenged him on the fact that this is a candidate, you've done a lot of work on Syria, which I think is wonderful. This is a candidate, Donald Trump, who ran against the admission of Syrian refugees. I hope you tried to convince him to change his view on that.
Did you speak to him about those issues?
Don,
if I could. Hold on.
We absolutely discussed all of that. On the contrary, the reason why there was a Syrian refugee crisis is that the United States decided not to impose a no-fly zone. President Obama decided that he would not enforce his red line when Syrian children, Arab children, were gassed. I hope you challenged this administration on all of those things. We wouldn't have a refugee crisis if Syria didn't turn into a quagmire.
The question was, again, you did challenge him on those issues.
We had a very substantive conversation about the need for the Trump administration to have a strong human rights agenda, because I think there is that is the gloss and the shine that any administration gets if it stands up for human rights.
Andy Dean, go ahead.
Sure. Well, Don, if I could about the Steve Bannon stuff, because it's outrageous what I watch on television. This guy is not anti-Semitic. He's a huge supporter of Israel. And where a lot of this anti-Steve Bannon stuff comes from is from the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League. And the guy who leads that is a guy by the name of Jonathan Greenblatt, who's just a far-left guy. He worked for Obama. He runs in far-left circles. Whereas the Republican Jewish Coalition has backed Steve Bannon. Bernie Marcus, the co-founder of Home Depot, came out with a glowing statement about how he's known Steve Bannon his whole life, and he's been a big supporter of Israel. So I think what we're seeing is a far-left group, the ADL, that doesn't represent all Jews, hates Steve Bannon. The Republican Jewish Coalition, which is a Republican group, likes Steve Bannon. So this is more about partisan politics than it is anti-Semitism.
So go ahead, Peter.
That really doesn't make a lot of sense. First of all, if the ADL is so
I think it made great sense.
If the ADL is so far left, how come they've also come out against Keith Ellison to be head of the Democratic National Committee?
Well, first they supported.
Let him finish.
No, but then they recently said
One at a time,
disqualified.
please.
The reason that the ADL is critical of Steve Bannon and the Republican Jewish Coalition is not, is that the ADL is concerned about misogyny and racism and Islamophobia in the Republican Jewish Coalition. Now, again, I have not said that Steve Bannon is an anti-Semite. What I have said is that Breitbart traffics in anti-Muslim bigotry, misogyny, and even racism in its support of the Confederate flag. The ADL cares about that. The Jews you're talking about, Andy, they don't.
Can I just be fair for a moment?
Peter, look,
you're a fair person. You know that the ADL, Jonathan Greenblatt, who's a friend of mine, he did at first come out. They did kind of say,
and then they came out against him.
Just 1 second. They implied he was an anti-Semite. It's not fair to destroy his reputation.
I'm not saying he's an anti-Semite.
Well, you're being more careful. As far as extreme rhetoric that can appear in Breitbart or anywhere else, I write for Breitbart, Huffington Post, the Wall Street Journal. I have seen people say things on the Huffington Post against Israel that were absolutely despicable. With all due respect to you, you once wrote that even Elie Wiesel, the most respected Jew of our time, sometimes covers over Jewish behavior. We've all made statements that we're not always proud of.
Sorry,
and I'm not
criticizing Elie Wiesel, who I also called a hero because I didn't.
Behavior.
I don't think that my criticism of Elie Wiesel for not being critical enough of Israel's occupation of the West Bank is the same as glorifying the Confederate flag, or saying that women who suffer sexual harassment online should simply get offline.
I wouldn't defend any of that. I'm simply saying, if you take a Nobel Peace Laureate and the face of the 6 million, you say that he's covering over Jewish occupation atrocities.
Rabbi Arthur Hertzberg,
I'm just wondering. Get to the specifics of what you said. You said you write for all these different organizations.
Yes.
None of those organizations, Arianna Huffington has never said that I am the platform for some racist group. Steve Bannon has said that he is a platform for the alt-right.
And I would challenge him on that. And I am very grateful to him that amidst his myriad responsibilities, that he gave me so much time, he was very generous, to talk about human rights specifically, because I do believe that amidst Trump saying that he doesn't want to be mired in quagmires in the Middle East and troops on the ground, there still has to be a language of freedom that I feel has been missing from the Obama administration. I think that we have to condemn Assad. And I think that the Trump administration, beginning with the Castro statement, there was an opening there. So that was the purpose of the meeting, and I'm very grateful to him for it. Let me also just say that this country stands for certain principles, among which are human liberty and human freedom and the dignity of the human person. We have to start hearing about that in politics, not just economics, and that's what you stand for. That I stand for that.
But
this is a senior.
I agree with you. I agree with you. But it's like talking about the Trump administration. Human rights is like we're living on different planets. The first call he took was from Sisi, the incredibly brutal dictator in Egypt. He's been a huge fan of Putin. He said nice things about the leadership of North Korea. We've never had a presidential candidate who has been as openly hostile to human rights as this candidate. You're going to have to do a lot of work, my friend. You're going to have to do a lot of work, my friend, if you're going to turn Donald Trump into a champion.
Let's both work on that. But let's be fair.
Andy,
President Obama has praised Erdogan.
Peter,
President Obama was neutral on Castro.
Okay, quickly. I've got 20 seconds. Go ahead, Andy.
I was going to say, Al-Sisi's a genius. He's the one that took out the Muslim Brotherhood,
and
which was a true threat to all of us. And Don, what you're seeing here is, I know the three of us are Jewish, and Don, I've heard rumors, you could be Jewish, so the four of us. You're just seeing different opinions here, and that's natural. So I just think that this is a partisan issue, not an anti-Semitic or anti-Islam or anti-woman. Steve Bannon is just a smart guy, and I think that's what we're seeing, just a smart person advising Trump, not a bigot, homophobe, racist, anti-woman person.
That's the last word. Thank you very much. Coming up, a tribute to